There's a clear reason this clip featuring Alex Phillips is spreading so fast online, and it's not because it's gentle, carefully balanced, or meant to make everyone feel at ease. It's gaining attention because it voices something that Britain's political leaders, much of the media, and cultural elites have spent years ignoring or pushing aside. This is not a speech driven by hate. It's a speech about people being left behind. And once you listen to it, it becomes obvious why so many ordinary people feel as though this country no longer feels like it's theirs.
Once upon a time, we respected the backbone of our society. Our brave men went to the trenches. They mended stuff and made stuff. They joined the army. They worked in mines. They manned production lines. They drove lorries. They didn't make much money, but they made enough. And they'd be the first to turn out to carry your bag, offer a pint, defend the nation. They knew your name. They helped you with stuff around the house, and they laughed the loudest, and they made the sort of jokes that were so close to the bone, our sides split. But we gave their jobs away. We cut the army. We never replaced heavy industry, and where there were still jobs, we gave them to other men from other countries because they cost less. So instead, we gave our men benefits. We took their dignity and their ability to provide for their families and replaced it with a handout. We robbed them of all opportunity and also robbed opportunity from their kids too. Their kids who now have kids of their own. We told them they can't make their jokes anymore, not even for light relief. We told them that everything they were once loved for, and indeed that they loved, was now considered thick, racist, and out of touch. Wake up, we yelled. Get with the programme. Get woke, you Neanderthal. You've had it your way for far too long and you messed it up. It's only right that you are now punished. Your relatives enslaved us. You're a patriarchal beast. You fragile, overprivileged moron. When they now turn on the television, they don't see people like them. The songs they once sang are now cancelled. Nobody like them writes songs anymore. Well, nobody that would get a recording contract. We called them lazy after they had to make a humiliatingly necessary calculation that to provide for their family, maybe even give their loved ones a holiday from their shithole neighbourhood, it was better to not work and claim benefits instead. When they tried to tell us how much they were hurting, how they felt overlooked, using the only words that they had, we called them racist. They didn't get the latest memo from the overpaid London PR consultant about what language was acceptable and which viewpoint was allowed to be held, how to work the ever-changing system to fit in. Of course, they're slow learners, and they also don't have protected status. They're monsters. So they tried at the ballot box to change things. 3 times they voted Conservative because they promised to cut immigration. They backed Brexit because that would put them first for a change. They saw that those in charge who hadn't been listening for decades were finally made to listen. And oh, did they listen. They then did everything in their power to bully and to shame, to silence the voices of those men, to frame them as a threat, to intimidate them and censor them. And so day after day, night after night, they watched their towns change irreparably. They watched people from other countries being given houses and doctor's appointments, so surely it must be their turn next. Surely. These other people were showered with the loving glow of just being wanted. Yes, wanted. But also actively cheered for. Refugees welcome. Black Lives Matter. Who are these people? They didn't get a chance to get to know them because those people didn't learn English. They couldn't find them at the pub, but it must be their fault because they didn't welcome them enough. They didn't understand them enough. That's right, it's because they must be racist. They then saw members of those communities complain still and witnessed superhuman efforts made by people in power to listen to them. And yet, some of them still riot when they don't get their own way. Some of them commit crimes, but when they do, it's not their fault. They just need to be better understood. Those people have been through things that none of us can relate to. They're disenfranchised. They have mental health issues. And it's probably your fault, you lazy, white racist. That, dear friends, that is the story of working class England. And I hope you enjoyed it. You know, some might call it a lived experience, but for those in it, it's an experience barely worth living.
For years, we've been told that Britain's biggest issue is how much privilege certain groups supposedly have. But Alex Phillips turns that idea upside down. And that's exactly why this speech lands with such force. Because what she's talking about isn't privilege at all. It's loss. She speaks about the men who once formed the backbone of Britain. Men who didn't have fancy degrees or comfortable office jobs, but who built things, repaired things, defended the country, and held communities together. Miners, soldiers, factory workers, drivers. Men who never asked for praise, only respect and dignity. And then, slowly and quietly, that dignity was taken away. Industries were shut down, the army was cut back, factories closed, and instead of creating new jobs to replace what was lost, the system brought in cheaper labor and told its own people to adjust, retrain, or step aside. When many of them couldn't adapt, they weren't helped to rebuild their lives. They were pushed onto benefits. And then, to make matters worse, they were mocked for relying on those benefits. That's the part many people don't want to acknowledge. Because once you take away a man's ability to provide, once pride is replaced with forms, rules, and handouts, you don't just damage an income. You destroy identity. You take purpose away from families. You lock entire generations into a cycle they can't escape, and when these people tried to speak up, they were shut down. They were told their jokes were offensive, their traditions were embarrassing, and their opinions were dangerous. Everything they had once been valued for was suddenly labeled as outdated, stupid, or racist. They weren't offered guidance or understanding. They weren't given media training. They weren't given the right words to express what they were feeling. They weren't invited into serious discussions or decision-making. So they turned to the one place where they still felt they had a voice: the ballot box. They voted Conservative. They supported Brexit. Not because they were bad people, but because for the first time in years, someone appeared to listen to them. And what happened after that? They were attacked. Their votes were described as a danger to democracy. Their worries were brushed off as prejudice. Their anger was treated like a problem to be diagnosed rather than a message to be understood. Alex Phillips also highlights a double standard that many prefer to ignore. Other groups are encouraged to speak about their lived experiences. Other groups are listened to, funded, promoted, and protected. Riots are explained away. Crime is analyzed with sympathy. Failure is blamed on past trauma. But when working-class England struggles, they are told it's their own fault. They turn on the television and barely recognize themselves. They walk through towns that no longer feel familiar. They are told to welcome constant change while receiving nothing in return. And when they finally ask a simple question, "What about us?" they are branded as villains. That is why this speech matters. You don't have to agree with every single point to see the truth at its center. A country that refuses to recognize the pain of its own people will, sooner or later, lose them. Alex Phillips isn't offering a comforting message. She's telling one that makes people uncomfortable, and that's exactly why it's being shared.